You look at a picture of me when I was 13, you're like, that kid's not an Olympics level athlete. But I had that dream to go to the Olympics. And I told them that my first practice of freshman year, and everyone kind of like, all right, buddy. Everyone says that, but nobody actually does it. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning, an hour lift school, and then after that is swim practice for 2 hours. That was my life through senior year of high school. And then I did that in college as well for 4 years. There's one meet left to qualify 5/100ths of a second. That's like a fingernail. That's the difference between you going to the Olympics and not. I was doubting. I don't even know if this is going to be possible. Brain is extremely powerful, and if you don't use it right, it'll go against you. Leaving Tokyo, I was very motivated for Paris. I'm walking out, and I looked at 20,000 people in the arena. The 50 freestyle in the Olympics was the most nervous I've ever been in my life. I made it to the semifinal, being the first in 20 years for Mexico. I never limited myself. I had ridiculous goals, but I'm shooting for that. I'm training as hard as I can to make it. I'm going to end up doing some crazy things.
Welcome to the Winners Club podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Wilson, and today I'm here with two-time Olympian Gabriel Castan. Gabriel, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to get into your mindset as an Olympian, but first I want to hear about your journey to become an Olympian. So let's start from the beginning. What are your first memories swimming?
My first memories in swimming are actually, I would say, pretty negative. I have a picture where I was 6 months old and I just got dunked in the water, and it just, I was born in water, I guess you could say, but never really liked it, never really took it as a very serious sport or anything like that. In fact, I only learned how to swim just for safety reasons, obviously, as I think everyone should, and because I was a triathlete. So my main sport at the time when I was growing up in Monterrey, Mexico, I was a mountain biker. So I loved mountain biking. That was what I did all the time. Every day after school, I would go to practice, and I lived in the mountains, so it was perfect. The swimming for me was a bit of a chore. It wasn't very fun. You couldn't really socialize. You're in the water. A lot of it's breath holding, and it's intense, and it's very, you're in the trenches when you're swimming. So for me, it was a bit of an adjustment. But to be honest, it took a long time for me to really appreciate it. And in fact, when we moved to the U.S., I was about 12 years old. My sister was a better swimmer than I was, and I didn't really care because my main sport was cycling, but. It wasn't until high school. In sixth grade, and I remember my teacher. I'll go back a little bit. In sixth grade, I remember my English teacher was like, "Oh, you're kind of tall and lanky, and in a good way, I guess." But I was kind of tall, had the length for it, had the build for it, and a lot of my friends were joining the swim team. And again, I always had relatively negative memories with swimming, but I figured why not? Just give it a shot and see where it goes. And pretty quickly, 2 weeks into the season, I was already, thinking about quitting, surprisingly, yeah. And I remember going back home and telling my mom, like, this is it. I didn't have to do it. I did it. I was just doing it to have fun and do some cross training because I was competing at the national level in track cycling. And that was actually my first Olympic dream. So I was, the velodrome, it's kind of like a cycling NASCAR type of, style. It's an oval and no brakes, no gears or anything, so it's pretty intense. It's fun, but it didn't really my future goals for sporting and for obviously being very competitive, I wanted to take it to the collegiate level, and there wasn't any cycling. So my first year in high school, I kind of did it and was on the fence about it, but I was like, just kind of stick with it. My mom told me to stick with it. Pretty quickly I started improving a lot. And that's when I started to get kind of confident a little bit more with my abilities, and I think mostly what I was able to do towards the end of the season, because I don't do things that I'm like. I played basketball, a year or two when I was younger, and I hated it because I was bad at it. I don't do, I'm competitive, like I said, so I need to be good at it, and to enjoy it, I need to be good at it. And that's kind of why I guess the relationship with swimming is a bit of a love-hate relationship still. Because it's an intense sport. It's not the most fun, you could say, but it is a very fulfilling time. At least looking back now, it was a lot of tough times, a lot of tough training, and getting up at 5 a.m, 4 times a week, 4 years in a row, basically 5 years in a row. But yeah, obviously it's given me a lot, so I'm very thankful for that. And I think just now spreading the message that at least, you don't have to like swimming, but it's essential. It's essential to learn how to swim for safety And for, I've met so many great people in the sport too.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of waking up at 5 in the morning, you didn't start swimming till high school, yet you became a 3-time state champion. So what led to your rapid growth?
That's right. Yeah, and I appreciate that. That's kind of a little known fact, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I remember getting up in front of the group, my first practice, or maybe it was the first week or something. And the coaches were like, it's like a goal meeting. So we're in there for practice for an hour. And it's a big team, relatively big team, but they asked everybody to go up for like 30 seconds and give us, kind of the rundown on your goals and whatnot. And at that time, I was probably a 10-time state champion in cycling. And, it sounds like a lot, but it's a small sport. So it's not like still a good feat, obviously, a lot of competition at the high level. But I was kind of cocky in the sense that I was like, well, I did it in cycling. Of course, it might take me a little bit longer, but I want to do that in swimming. I want to get to the state level and be a state champion. And I told them that my first practice of freshman year, and everyone kind of like, it's like, all right, buddy. Like everyone says that, but nobody actually does it. And we never had a state champion in my school, small Catholic school. It was probably 700 kids. And so it took a while for me to really, starting to get that confidence. I kind of totally forgot about that until my coach told me a couple of years ago, like, I remember you telling everybody that you wanted to be a state champion, and everybody thought it was ridiculous. And then, but yeah, anyway, off on a tangent. But yeah, I for me, it was an incredible couple of years in high school. Obviously, a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes. But my sophomore year, I would say, is probably the one where it really changed everything, because I came in sophomore year and I was like, I think I'm done with cycling. And that was, like I said, my sport. I was great at it, but I didn't really see a future, in especially at the collegiate level, obviously. So for me, it was, how do I pivot? How do I, put it all into swimming and see if I can make it to the highest level? And if I can't, then whatever. I'll just go to college, get an education, and whatever. But luckily, I was able to, really, really hone down on my skills. Especially, I try to tell people, like, if you're not a student of the sport, it'll take you a lot longer to catch up and to gain ground on your competition. So for me, it was a very simple game. How do I catch up as fast as possible, given the fact that I've started late, relatively? And how do I beat the competition, regardless of the level that I'm at? I always want to win. That's a common thing obviously for all of us athletes, but for me, it was watching videos at night. I mean, after I'm done, studying, doing homework, all that, watching videos of how to do a start, how to go into the water perfectly, and you know what? I'm still not great at it. I'm still not perfect at it, because at this level, you have to be perfect. But when you're growing up, everyone, these kids will ask me, like, how do you improve? How do I get to that level? There's a million factors. But if you're not a student of the sport, if you're not passionate about it, if you're not, intense in the want, the need to be the best, it's tough. And for me, and that was easy for me in high school. It was just, I loved the sport. I was obsessed. And it was easy for me to just study it as much as I could, ask a ton of questions to my coaches. I think that was a huge, huge step forward for me, and it got me to get a scholarship at Penn State, which led to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So,
Waking up at 5 a.m., right? To
Oh, yeah.
do workouts before every day. I want to make sure you talk about that so they know.
yeah.
5 a.m. every day?
Oh, yeah.
before
Well,
school?
in high school,
Yeah.
this is crazy. So, and looking back, even now, I think it's crazy because I can't do that now. I mean, I was 16, 17. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to I think it was 5:10 or 5:15 class, and it was CrossFit. But at the time, I was kind of under the impression that CrossFit was great for lifting, and I think still it is, but it doesn't really emphasize the technique and a lot of the things that are important for staying healthy and out of injury. But at the time, I would get up at like 4:40, whatever it was, super early, freezing. I mean, we lived in Pennsylvania, so winters are awful there, and we're getting up. I mean, I say we because it was like a very small group of people, but as far as high school swimmers, I think it was me and some other guy, and that was only for a couple days. I was in there 4 times a week. 3 of those were before school at 5, and then get back home. It's an hour lift CrossFit session, and then I get home around 6, got a shower, got to eat, leave for school, be there all day, and then after that is swim practice for 2 hours. And that was my life for the last, sophomore year through senior year of high school. And my dad's an early bird. He wakes up at 4:30, 5 in the morning as well. And there's some days that I would get up before him, which I can't do now.
Yeah, right.
So thinking about it, yeah, it's crazy. And then I did that in college as well for 4 years. So now I'm still kind of an early bird, but definitely not as much. Yeah, for sure.
And well, the hard work paid off because you made it to Penn State. And initially you were a walk-on, right? I think later you got the scholarship.
Yeah.
But what were the initial difficulties you faced at Penn State?
When I was getting recruited, I wasn't allowed to talk to coaches until the summer of going into my senior year. And I had done okay. I was state champion my junior year, only in the 50 freestyle, but I had been second place in the 100 freestyle to one of my really good buddies. And at the time, I was looking, but not really sure where I wanted to go. I had some offers from D3, D2 schools, but for me it was all right. So I'm not gonna stress too much about finding the right place to be. I just want to be relatively close to home, and potentially get a scholarship if possible. And really the only two options were Penn State and Pitt. In-state tuition, going in, as you said, I was a walk-on, technically a walk-on. Like I had signed the letter of intent or whatever that is, and but I had no scholarship at all. And it was until that was starting my senior year in high school. By states of my senior year in high school, I had won the 50 and the 100 freestyle. Before that, I went to another competition and did really well as well. So I had 3 really good results going into Penn State, and they called me that summer. I remember I was in my car and I just got a call from the coach, and it was kind of weird. I'm like, what's going on? Something wrong? I mean, I assumed it was positive because of my results and everything. And he called me and he said, we love the results that you've been hitting and these goals that you've been hitting. So we'll give you 25% going into school. And it was like, wow, that was incredible because, I've always wanted to. Tuition is very expensive, and my dad obviously was willing to help, but anything was a help. It was great. So started there, and a lot of the challenges that I faced. Actually, before I even stepped foot on campus, I sprained my ankle. Guess what? Playing basketball, which I knew I shouldn't have done, but I was, having fun with some of my friends, and I went for a dunk, and at the time I was like, I can dunk because I was pretty strong and whatever, and I went for a dunk, and it was one of those with the bases, with the water bases. I landed on it, and I tore one of my ligaments in my ankle. I don't even know which one, but regardless, I was unable to put any weight on it for 2 months, and that was like a month before going to college. So I'm going in there with crutches, going to classes, and not able to swim really, and it was a really, really tough first impression that I was giving to my coaches when I'm on scholarship and everything. Expectations are high, and a lot of the expectations are no one expects more than myself. Like I expect more out of me than anyone else, and that was really tough for me because I'm like, shape I'll be in when I get back, and it was definitely a bit of a upwards climb going into college as a freshman, being all intimidated. I'm in a big Power 5 school, Big Ten. Some of the people that I'm training with are Olympians, and so I felt like, man, I've got a lot to do here, a lot to improve on, and push myself towards the best.
Eventually at Penn State, you broke school records and you became the second fastest swimmer in 50 free of all time there. So what led to those accomplishments? Like you talked about work ethic, but were there sacrifices you made, living the college life, things like that? What were the sacrifices you made?
The main challenge for me was just focusing on the important things, which to me was obviously school and swimming, but like a lot of people just cruise through it. Hate to say it, but a lot of people in college sports, and that's everywhere you go. Every level you go, there's a lot of people that just cruise through it. And I was not one of those people. Like I can't it's very hard to find somebody that can do both at the very highest level. And for me, I had that dream to go to the Olympics, and I put a lot of effort into that. And my sophomore year, I got injured. My knee basically blew up from a couple ligaments. My patella tendon was pretty heavily damaged. I got surgery on all that, and my meniscus was partially torn, and that was from overuse. A lot of the training that we did at Penn State was very kick heavy, and with resistance and power focused, and it was great. But it definitely wore me out a little bit, and during that time, COVID and all that, I was injured. I got surgery. I was out for months and months, and leading up to that swim where I was second, I was just 3/100ths off of the school record. I did not really expect a result like that because I had been out for a little bit in the fall. I didn't really compete in the fall, and then I went into Big Tens and I swam one of my best races ever. But it wasn't really the goal for me. I didn't really care that I didn't break the school record because I knew, obviously, I'm blessed to have the opportunity to represent my country in the Olympics in Mexico, and it gives me, they gave me that goal. I didn't really, I obviously cared about college swimming. I got second place at Big Tens that year, but the ultimate goal was the Olympics, obviously. So it was just, I saw it as a step onto that ultimate goal.
And you made it to the 2020 Olympics, but before that, there were a lot of obstacles like the knee injury, getting COVID, and qualifying at the last possible minute. So, yeah, what led to that? How was that qualification process for you?
No, it was brutal. I had come out of that season just before Big Tens, my senior year. I was out for a week and a half because of COVID. So I had it myself. I didn't really have symptoms. I couldn't leave my apartment for 2 weeks. And that was, like I said, about a month before the Big Tens competition. The way I saw it was, okay, I was out for 2 weeks. I pretty much, not starting from zero, but almost resetting the training cycle that I was in at the time. And so the way I saw it is, okay, we made NCAAs. I'm going to have to kind of ease back into it / taper for NCAAs. But that gives me 3 months, 3 months of qualifying time with training and with taper included. And taper takes about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks, depending on the type of meet. And for me, it was very, I was doubting a lot of things at the time. I was like, well, I don't even know if this is going to be possible. I felt good about it, but I also, there was a lot of traveling, and I traveled across the pond and tried to swim the 50 freestyle, trying to qualify. Right off the bat, I wasn't trying to, save myself for anything, and I was giving it 110%. I remember it very clearly. It was in Monaco, beautiful, beautiful pool and everything, and I loved the trip that we took there, but I was laser focused. I didn't really get to walk around Monaco too much. I obviously, I'm a big F1 guy, so I wanted to, and I was craving it, just kind of like get to know the city. But anyway, I remember the results. I was very disappointed because I had given it 110%, and I was training for that very moment. And even, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to qualify in Monaco, and I'm going to fly back home. That's it. I'm going to cancel the rest of the trip. I don't need to be on the trip. And it sounds glamorous, right? Like Monaco, you go to Europe for a swim meet. It was not. I'm known for kind of, when I travel, if it's for swimming, I'm not having fun. I'm focused. I'm laser focused, and I'm just, I'm there with one goal. And it happens to this day. It happened in the Olympics in Paris this past year. But at the time, I was very concerned, and sure enough, I wasn't even close to the time. And so I kind of took a step back, and I was like, all right, I'm kind of resetting. I swam again, and I was still pretty far off. So my attitude was definitely a bit shaky at the time. I was like, I'd really traveled that far, out of my own pocket, by the way, because Mexico was not really helping out much at the time, at all, really. It was discouraging for sure. But I talked to my coach at Penn State, and he said, there's one meet left. And that was it, in California. And it was literally the last chance meet. I think that's what it's nicknamed. And So I went not really knowing what to expect. I got in my own head. I was like, I don't know if this is going to be done. And in the morning, I swam 22:20, then it was 22:12, then it was 22:06, I believe, and in the final. And to me, I was very blocked mentally. I was like, I don't know if I can do better than that. I gave it 1,000%. I gave it everything. I didn't breathe. I took like 300 milligrams of caffeine, dry scoop, everything. I was like, everything that I can do to just qualify. And I was still 5/100ths off. That's like nothing. And I left that meet almost like defeated. I was like, if I don't make the Olympics because of 5/100ths of a second, that's going to crush me for the rest of my life. And the next day, there's always time trials are pretty common in swimming. At the time, they were taking time trials. I believe they changed the rule because I don't want to say about me because of me, obviously, but a lot of people qualified in time trials, and you get to kind of be in your own little space. You don't get the pressure, I guess, from the crowd watching. And the 50 free is the one that everyone watches. The 50 and the 100 free, they're like the queen events, king and queen events. Everyone watches it. It's the most exciting. It's the closest. And so the time trial was just kind of my teammates, and my dad was there, and even my coach flew home because he had assumed that if I don't qualify in the finals the day before, then that's it. And I remember, to get into the time trial slot, you had to pay $20. I'm like, okay. Obviously I don't care about that, but I'm like, well, it's like stupid. All right, I have to pay $20 to swim it again, but I was like, whatever, I'll do it again. And I didn't sleep that night. I was like, just adrenaline, kind of mixed emotions, like, but a little bit of negativity in there. Like, I think I missed my opportunity. And sure enough, the next day with like 6 hours of sleep, another, dry scoop, a pre-workout or whatever. And I dive in and I get the exact same time. And for context, try to get a stopwatch and stop it at a 1/100th of a second. It is, my dad measured, he's an engineer, so he's a math guy, he measured it. He's like, well, that's like a fingernail. If like this much, that's the difference between you going to the Olympics and not.
How did you thrive under that pressure? Like, what was the secret in that moment to get over that hump? Did you have any technique?
No, and I still don't really know the answer to that, to be honest. It's tough because a lot of athletes say, it's like there's this recipe for being, dealing with pressure. There's not. It's repetition is the main thing. The best athletes in the world that deal with a lot of pressure, they're good at it because they've done it multiple times, not because they just are born with it or study it or anything. For me, it was with the hiccup from the injury, it really messed with my mental capacity in swimming. I always was a very, very like confident swimmer, borderline cocky. I wasn't show off at all. I never showed off that like my results or anything, but I was always very confident. I was like, I would get up on the blocks and look around and be like, I can beat every single person on here. In my mind, obviously. But that kind of took a big hit when when I got injured because the repetition. That's, I mentioned the repetition. It goes away. And to this day, I haven't found that rhythm that I used to have. But it was really, really tough. And I tell you, the race in the 50 freestyle in the Olympics in Tokyo that year was the most nervous I think I've ever been in my life. And it was scary because I was like having almost like a panic attack. I'm walking out and the whole arena, it's a giant arena in Tokyo, probably seats about 15,000 people, completely empty because of COVID. Very, very strange feeling, but I knew that through the cameras, like hundreds of thousands, millions of people are watching. So I'm like, it's very, very odd, eerie feeling.
Going into the Olympics Tokyo, what were your initial thoughts and goals going into it, and then what was the post?
Honestly, I had high expectations for myself, but it was kind of not really necessary. I was very, like I said, I expect high things out of myself more than anyone else, and I was expecting to make a semifinal in my mind, but realistically, though, I was nowhere close to that, especially coming off of I tapered for probably 2 months almost. Straight, and that is not something that you can do as a swimmer. It doesn't work physically. Your body just doesn't keep up with that. And so I went to Tokyo and just supposedly I had high expectations, but I just didn't come close to them. So unfortunate, but I took it as a learning experience. And really leaving Tokyo, I was very motivated for Paris. I was like, the Paris Olympics, that's going to be my goal. But very quickly that kind of faded.
What do you mean by that?
After the Olympics in Tokyo, I retired for a little bit.
You retired, and then what made you eventually come back? Or what made you retire first, and then what made you come back eventually?
Initially, I didn't have that passion for it anymore. And really, I don't see, this is personal, me personally, I don't think anyone really agrees with me, but I don't see the point in competing outside of the Olympics in swimming. And I still do. I still think that it's kind of hypocritical sitting here saying that, but because I've done it a lot of times, obviously. But at that level, your body can only take a certain amount of training and really 100% hyper focus. I did it for a year before Paris, and I think that was ideal. I really do think, especially as a sprinter, you're able to do that physically. And after Tokyo, I was just like, okay, I went to the Olympics. That was my goal. I wanted more, but realistically, what's it really going to change? Unless I get a medal, doesn't really matter. And I've always, been focused on life after swimming. I've never really been hyper focused on, all right, I'm going to be an Olympic swimmer for the next 6 years and until LA, whatever. No, I want to develop my work career, and I want to build businesses and have ideas like that. And I don't think I can really do that with swimming alone. So after that, I took a break from it. I really consistently didn't swim for 2 years, basically. But I was still competing here and there, and luckily I can get away with that with sprinting. Like right now, I'm not training as much in swimming, but I'm lifting every day, and I could pretty confidently say I can put up a really good time right now because I'm lifting, and it allows me to do that. If I was a longer distance swimmer, then that would be very controversial and not possible. But yeah, I'm liking I like to balance both, and that means leaving the sport for a little bit, mental hiatus, kind of take a break. I think it's ideal, and a lot of people have started to realize that it's the more mentally and physically healthy way of doing things.
Well, that technique worked because you did make it to the Paris 24 Olympics. So what were your initial thoughts going into that? And then, how did that experience go for you?
So I worked in tech, and that's the reason that I moved down here to Dallas, tech sales. And I was really it was a good first real world job, I guess you could say. But it was not really something that I wanted long term. And, I left the company and was doing other things on the side with some friends, and was really just kind of, what do I do? I looking for my next move, basically. And I had a friend reach out to me and was like, are you still swimming? I was like, no. Well, are you living in Dallas? I said, yeah, I just moved down here like a couple months ago. And she said, well, there's a coach, Coley Stickles, in Frisco. And I was like, well, no way. I basically live in Frisco. But I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was. I had heard his name. A lot of people in the swimming world know him. And sure enough, I Google his name, and immediately I'm like, oh, okay, he was the coach for Indiana. And I swam Indiana countless times at Penn State. And in fact, I was second place at Big Tens that year. The guy that won was one of his swimmers and one of his best swimmers. So, it took a bit of a convincing for myself and from my family that to go talk to him and see what's up and see if it was of interest of me, going back into swimming. And I didn't really see it as a very serious commitment at the time. I was like, I'm just going to see how it goes and hope for the best. But hey, I didn't really want to get back into the 9-to-5 grind just yet, and figured, well, 1 year of training for the Olympics, I can, really make my goal of going to the semifinals in the Olympics. And sure enough, it just kind of started developing. But I remember starting off with Coley, it was rough. I mean, his practices are tough. I respect him immensely, but his practices were very, very tough mentally for the first, couple months because I wasn't in great shape. Through the winter, long winter of training and, very, very tough practices, I've never had a training, block training cycle like I did with Coley that year for Paris. It was intense. It was brutal. I remember just coming home every day, just like, just completely exhausted. I'm done. And but I felt really good about it. I felt really like this is heading in a good direction, and my goals are very high for Paris, but step by step. The Tier Pro Series is like a big swimming event in the U.S., kind of a tour almost, you could say. And they had one in San Antonio, and I thought that was perfect. I had a lot of family in San Antonio. I had family in Mexico that could easily, come up if they wanted to. And my parents met me in San Antonio, and we went there, and with the goal of qualifying. But I didn't really know what I was capable of. And my coach told me many times. He saw me in practice and timed me, and he said, I don't think you know what you're capable of. And he couldn't have been more right, because I expected, a 21.9, that was the time to qualify, and that's it. I wanted to qualify and then, fine tune those details in order to get to that semifinal. But I mean, I got there, and the biggest names in swimming were there. The biggest names in the U.S. team, Caleb Dressel, 5-time gold medalist from Tokyo. The stars aligned, essentially. And I went there in 21.6. At the time when I swam that was fourth in the world. And to me, that I was like, took me a little bit to realize what I'd just done, but I really it sank in, and I was like, okay, so now I really have a shot, not just at a semifinal, but at a final. Top 8 finish. I don't think it's happened for Mexico since 1968. Could be wrong about that, but long time.
There, yeah.
Regardless, long time. Dealing with that pressure, like you mentioned, I ignored that. I really just I had come off of a very good meet that I didn't prepare for, just a home meet, see kind of what time I go, and I was very close to my own personal record. So it just kind of gave me that boost.
And at the Paris Olympics, you did reach the semifinals, officially becoming one of the best swimmers in the world. So how did it feel to achieve that?
It was just something else. I mean, I was the only one there on the Mexican team that had been to the previous Olympics. And so I say that because I had a different mindset going in. My first Olympics, you're there for the experience, really, and obviously you want to do really well, but you're there everything's new, everything's like you're in an environment where you've dreamt being in for a long time. And for me, it was about the experience in Tokyo. But in Paris, I was like, all right, I'm going to lock in. This is it. The goal is to make a semifinal first. Then after that, I will try to make a final. But focus on that. I wasn't going out and socializing. I wasn't going out and sightseeing, the village or Paris, really. It was it kind of sucked because I did the opening parade, opening ceremony in Paris, but luckily, in Tokyo it was a lot of walking, and I made sure that it wasn't going to be walking in Paris. Luckily, they were doing ferries, and so we were just on the ferry by the Seine River, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. But everything that beyond that, everything was like, all right, focus on swimming, focus on the goal at hand. And I was one of the only ones that was really just kind of hunkered in the apartment. It was kind of lonely. It was a little bit boring, but I'm glad that I did that because I look back and I was very, very focused on making a semifinal. That was the only thing that I wanted to do. And after that, I could have, I wanted to enjoy Paris, but heading into the day where I swam, I remember being pretty calm about it. I was like, I'm not really feeling that nerve just yet. Well, I guess, no, I did feel it a lot actually a couple of days before, but it kind of eased into it. So it was like building up and up and up. The day of, I was very, very nervous, but I try not to think about it too much because that's the thing. I start overthinking and thinking about the mistakes that I could make and whatnot. And I just showed up, tried to block off my mind, turn off the brain because the brain is extremely powerful. And if you don't use it right, it'll go against you. And I'm very good at visualizing my races, but sometimes again, it could be negative if you don't use it right. So before the race, I remember just putting on music and just locking in just as much as I could. And my family, I remember walking out. My family was like right on the first row, and it was really cool to see them there right before I swam. And to be honest, I didn't really have a great swim. My time wasn't great, but I made it in 11th place to the semifinal. And I looked at the board. I mean, it's just insane. Like 20,000 people in the arena probably. I look at the board and the results are showing who made it to the semifinal, and they show the top 8. And 8th place was like pretty close to my time. So I was like, okay, I think and then, sure enough, the next page, I was 11th place, and it was like, all right, I didn't celebrate it too much. I was like, that was the goal. I'm not going to freak out about it. I'm not going to overthink it. Immediately when I saw my name up there in 11th place, moving on to the semifinal, my brain just switched into, all right, rest up, get ready for tonight. That's it. That was my only thought. And I do know that a lot of people had kind of like the flu going around, and I didn't really feel too hot, so I was like, oh man, this is not great. But in fact, my roommate I believe he had COVID. And, now, I guess now they were like, it doesn't really matter, just kind of deal with it, hope for the best that you don't get it. But I definitely had some sort of cold or allergy or something. Felt under the weather a little bit. But anyway, I got back to the village, and I remember I was not feeling great. I felt really congested, and the nurse did acupuncture on me, had a little stick of, right in my forehead, and then one on my chin, and I don't know, it was really strange, first time doing that. But I went back and I was like, really at this point I want to make the final, but I'm pretty happy with how far I made it and the times that I've hit. And I think that put me in a better mindset, but my body was just completely out of it. Don't know why. And unfortunately didn't make the finals. It was 15th, but still very proud of what I was able to accomplish as far as being the first in 20 years to make the finals or semifinals. And especially in my event, I don't even know if there's ever been a sprinter for Mexico making the semifinals, let alone so I didn't make the final, but hey, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Were you able to enjoy that? Like whenever you hit you realized you were 15, like you made the semifinals?
I kind of had a moment of peace where I was like, it is what it is. I mean, and by the way, with my best time, that ranked fourth in the world when I qualified, it would not have made the finals. And that's how stacked the final was. I mean, it was insane to see the times. I think 21.6 low was who made it to the final. My time when I qualified would have been like third place in the 2004 Olympics. I mean, the sports change a lot, but that kind of gives you perspective how much faster it's gotten. And so that kind of gave me, that was relieving to see, is like, all right, no matter what, with my best time at the, like I said, stars aligned in San Antonio and everything, it felt great and it was awesome. I still wouldn't have made the final. And kind of sucks to think about it that way, but it put me in a state where I was a little bit more accepting of the result. And at the end of the day, I made the Olympics, and how many people get to say that they did that and make a semifinal? So very happy about that. And then after that, I remember going up, and there's like a long maze of like the media. You just have to go and they stop me and interview in Spanish. Obviously, I was like, you know what? I'm very satisfied. I'm happy with it. Could have done better, sure, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm satisfied. I'm happy. I feel good. And now it's time to kind of enjoy Paris and enjoy life a little bit with the family. And that was kind of my mindset, yeah.
Even though you made history, you're just like, it's another day.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really weird now when you put it like that, because it's true. I don't think about it that way as much, because I see it as another day in the office kind of, and I'm sure it's the same for, people like LeBron or people like Kobe or Tom Brady. I know they're retired, but like, you're in that state and you're the best in the world at something, or close to it. I wasn't the best in the world, still am not, but I was in a place where, I did break a lot of records and I did a lot of great things in swimming, but to me it's like, that was a good chapter in my life, but now it's behind me. You know, I can't dwell on it too much, and I've been very good at that throughout my life. And in certain situations, you know, the state championship, that was an awesome memory. And I look back and I look at the pictures and the videos, and it's a great memory. But I tend to put those behind me pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess being hyper focused and enjoying the journey.
Yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
Speaking of that, do you have any practices that you do to take care of your mental health? Like, how do you deal with the highs and lows of your sport?
I mean, I'll be completely honest. I don't know. I mean, I can sit here and tell you that I had these strategies, but I don't. I mean, I'm human. I mean, obviously, every athlete that you see, most of them are human, I would say. I mean, life is the same for most people. You know, you have the ups and downs, and you have to deal with it your own way. I'm Catholic. I'm religious, and I rely on that quite a lot. And so I try to, you know, put my back into that when I need it. And it's helped me a lot with really tough situations. Coming out of swimming, I felt very satisfied and obviously very grateful to God for blessing me with that ability and everything. And, you know, like I said, I'm satisfied. I moved on for, at least for now. I don't know what the future holds, but that's also, you know, God's plan. So.
All right, before we finish, I'd like to ask you the final five. We can do these rapid fire. These are the final 5 questions I ask every athlete. So the first question is, what's the misconception about being an Olympian?
Yeah, that it's glamorous. It's not. It's not glamorous. No, we have twin beds. They're like recycled. They're not like very comfy. We're on cardboard beds. I mean, no, it is. I'm just kind of kidding, but it's a great experience. But it's definitely not as glamorous as people think it is.
What's a memory that at the time felt like you're the worst in your career, but now you can look back at it and laugh, or at least see the value in it?
Ooh, Pan Ams of 2023. I didn't do well, but I know that it was a great time. Number one, because I was able to be a leader at that meet. I was one of the more veteran, I guess, swimmers, and a lot of young swimmers were there, and just kind of showing them the ropes, you know, showing them how things are done and kind of how we run things, and a little bit of a, you know, veteran moment there. But it was kind of, at the time, like I said, just not a very great meet, but it was a very positive experience and a lot of learning.
What's the best memory of your career?
For sure, Paris. I mean, Tokyo was a great experience, but definitely, you know, not having my family there and being so far away, and it was weird. But Paris, everyone was there. I really just, it was a dream come true, and that's not something a lot of people can say, because Tokyo wasn't like that. So Paris, I had my entire family almost on both sides. You know, a lot of people went. My grandmother flew across the pond to see me swim, and a lot of extended family that I hadn't even seen in a number of years. So, and then just telling, I mean, people just reaching out to me that I haven't talked to in 15 years. They're like, we watched you swim. It was awesome. Friends from Monterey, where I grew up. I left when I was 12. I mean, people that I hadn't, like I said, talked to in 15 years, they tell me, man, it was awesome watching you in the Olympics, and it was a great honor, and I'm just, and they're all like, hey, I know him. And to me, it's obviously awesome. It's really awesome to hear that, but it's almost shocking. I'm like, why? That's great. I mean, I'm very happy that you did, and but it's kind of like a really feel-good moment, because, you know, I don't know. I guess it's a really impactful, and I don't really realize that a lot of times. So yeah.
Was there a favorite moment when it hit? Like maybe just walking and seeing your family after the race?
That's tough, because I right after my swim, I wasn't very happy. So, but I think, you know, the day after was probably when I was like, you know what, let's enjoy life. We're in Paris. Never been to Paris. Beautiful city. I really loved it, and I'm kind of biased towards it because of that memory, because of the Olympics, but I loved Paris, and definitely want to go back. And my family, just spending the time with my family, those days that I was with them, exploring the city and being tourists, and not being an athlete for once, and when I'm traveling, was a really special trip.
What's some advice you could give to young athletes that want to be in your position? They want to be Olympians. What's some advice you could give them?
Yeah, be students. As I mentioned earlier, you have to study the sport. If you're not passionate about it, if you don't want to, if your parents are telling you to do the sport, chances are it's probably not for you. And that goes out to parents as well. Be very careful, because you can tell your kids to do a certain sport. If they don't want to do it, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. In my experience, my dad never told me to swim, never told me to. He always told me, you have to do a sport.
Right.
Pick a sport and do it right.
Right.
Beyond that, you can do whatever you want. And I remember he was pretty disappointed when I quit cycling because it's an expensive sport. And I'd invested a lot of time into it, a lot of energy, a lot of, obviously my dad financially and everything. So when I told him that I was quitting and going to swimming, he was like very confused, but like, all right, I mean, I guess be students of the sport. The parents have to be, obviously motivating, but very careful. There is a lot of, I've seen many kids that were, in high school, very high level. A lot of those kids were going to go D1 for sure, but the parents were insufferable. Hate to say it, but they were very difficult to deal with. The kids then ended up hating the sport, and swimming in itself is already not a very fun sport. When you add the parent to it, where it's just a lot of pressure, a lot of constant nagging, like you need to go to practice, you need to do this, you're doing this wrong. I saw it so much, and I'm blessed that my parents were never on me like that.
Right.
And in fact, my dad doesn't even know how to swim, I don't think. So that was a very positive thing for me too, because he'll even to this day, before Paris, he would be like, well, your entry's a little wrong. I'm like, slow down. You have no idea what you're talking about.
See you do it.
Yeah. I think kids need to enjoy it, love it, and if not, then it's going to be very tough. But either way, pick a sport. Just be passionate about it and be good at it.
Yeah, how were you able to maintain that passion? Even you fell in love with cycling. How were you able to keep that passion for swimming?
It's a good question. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship. Swimming is not glamorous. The training isn't. The competing, sure, you could say it is, but it's a lot of grinding, and I had a bit of a love-hate relationship. Still do. I'm like, I'm good at it. That's my answer. I'm good at it. I like it because I'm good at it, and I can continue that good trajectory and those good times because I have that talent and that ability, and I worked for it very hard. I wasn't born with it, and certainly wasn't born with the physical attributes. You look at a picture of me when I was 13. You're like, that kid's not an Olympic level athlete. I wasn't the tallest. I wasn't the strongest by any means, but I had the drive and the passion to be better than everybody else, and the student mentality. So that's what really drove me. But the passion in swimming is definitely a roller coaster. It's not constant, and I don't think it is in any sport. So yeah.
All right, last question. How do you define the word winner?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just getting the best possible result. Know your limitations, because for me, I want to. I always said, shoot for the stars, and at least you'll end up on the moon. I don't know where I read that. I don't want to take credit for that, but essentially meaning you shoot further than your goals, and you're going to end up much further than you expected. That is actually a good reason, or a very solid reason that I ended up in the Olympics in the first place, because I never limited myself. A lot of people I've seen are just like, well, I don't have the ability for it physically, or the drive for it. That's already limiting yourself. And if I had ridiculous goals my junior year of college, especially. I would put some times that are just ridiculous. But you know what? I'm shooting for that. I'm training as hard as I can to make it. I'm going to end up doing some crazy things. Might not hit that, but I'll do some really good things. And obviously, I didn't win the Olympics, but I do consider my results and my times to be winning level as far as me personally, my goals. And, I think carrying that through life, that attitude is I might not be the best at really everything or anything, but I'm going to try my hardest to be it. Winning, I think, really boils down to knowing your limitations, but also being trying to not limit yourself, but being realistic. And if you hit those goals and you know that you push yourself to the absolute maximum, I think that in your own book, you're a winner.